Welcome to Megabucks Radio. Conversations with successful entrepreneurs, sharing their tips and strategies for success. Real world ideas that can put megabucks in your bank account. Here's your host, Nina Hershberger.
Well, welcome to today's show. You know, I have lots of fun with guests on here, but today's guest, hang on to your britches or whatever they would say, because this man is going to take us on a journey and a ride unlike any that I've probably had on the show up to this point. So my guest today is Jesse Lennon. Jesse, I'm not even sure where you live.
I'm just outside of the Richmond, Virginia area, a little town called Mechanicsville. So it would be a suburb, but yeah. Okay,
all right. So you're not just, I'm in Indiana, so you're over on the East Coast and stuff. Well, right. Jesse started back in, it looks like in about 1981 is where we pick up the story of his real estate. I think you started in the mortgage industry, but go back before that. Were you always an entrepreneur, or tell me a little bit before that for Jesse?
It's a great question. Nobody's actually ever asked. I guess I was probably 10 or 11, and I had read a book about it was about a young boy that did some kind of detective work of some form or fashion. And so the next thing you know, I had grabbed a piece of plywood out of the garage and I found a can of paint. And so I wrote, detective agency on it and set it right there at the end of the street, or at the end of the road at the street. Never got a phone call. But, of course, that, I also sold grit newspapers door to door and things of the sort. When you're younger, there's only so many things you can try and actually sell. But I think what it is truly, and it's a great question, Anna, is that I grew up always hearing from my father that if you really want to be successful, you have to work for yourself. Well, the problem was he never really defined what success is, because it's different for my dad, it's different for you, it's different for me, it's different from everyone that's listening to your show. Really, it's, how do you define success for yourself? But not realizing that when I was much younger, it's, I want to be successful, so I got to figure out a way to work for myself. So I guess I could make up something that sounded better, but that's the truth of it. And I've never really had anybody ask, so that's the truth. True story. How about that?
That's great. I always tell the story that when I was growing up, I don't remember this, but my parents told me I wanted to go door to door selling rusty bobby pins. It was probably right there with that detective. You were probably the one down the street from me.
You're right. Right. That's funny. That's great. Rusty bobby pins. Perfect.
Yeah. They didn't let me, but I wanted to. So okay. So let's fast forward. You got into the mortgage business in 1981. How did that happen?
Well, my father got his real estate license in the mid-'70s. My father's actually a pharmacist by training. But pharmacy then, much like it is today, you work, in many cases, quite a few days, very, very long days in a row, but then you have quite a few days off. And so my dad, being the product of the Depression, you always have 2 and 3 sources of income. You've got 2 or 3 jobs. So he got his real estate license so that he could maybe sell a home here, sell a home there, on his days off. And somehow, and I'm guessing it was from a Opportunities style magazine that he would go grab off the newsstand or the magazine stand and, peruse it while he's at the pharmacy and doesn't have anybody to help. He came across an ad for a mortgage broker, meaning how to be a mortgage broker by another mortgage broker. And I kept hearing him talk about, gosh, this sounds pretty interesting. You can probably make a lot of money at this. And then, dagnabbit, there was a full-page ad in that magazine, I guess an issue or two later. There was a young fella who was, if my memory serves me, I think he was 17. Might have been 19, but I think he was 17. And he had apparently gotten this gentleman's course, became a mortgage broker, and became quite successful. And so my dad kept trying to push me to become a mortgage broker. And we bought the how-to course, and so that's how I started National Financial Network. I was 16 at the time, and I know I closed one loan. I might have closed two, but I know I closed one. But the thing about it is, it wasn't because of a lack of closing the many loans that I would say that was actually very successful for me. It was really more because of what I learned about the mortgage process and how it works and the context that I made within the mortgage industry. That really helped me a lot, because later, I became a real estate agent and an investor, and you have to understand how to finance the real estate, or you can't buy it and or sell it, whether it's for yourself or someone else, without being able to get that thing financed, unless you're independently wealthy and can just write a lot of checks, right? So
Jesse, I know we're going to talk about systems, but do you think that is one issue that real estate agents often don't understand, that funding process?
I would say that the majority of them have a very rudimentary understanding, especially because, I guess since probably 2010, there have been very, very limited flavors for financing. So most real estate agents only know the basics. So I think you're right. They don't know a lot about a lot of the other techniques. You're starting to see a few of them come back into vogue that there used to be commonplace when I was an active and aggressive agent, but they just disappeared and got out of favor. So I think you're probably right. And most people don't have a good handle on the financing. They just, here, talk to this person. They're a loan officer.
And if you can't get financing, I have to move on is the point.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So you don't have a mortgage brokerage company right now. So you transitioned into actually selling real estate and actually investing, I think in the early days as well.
Yeah. In 1983, when I was 18, my dad and I bought a foreclosed property. It was from Sovereign Bank, which after a couple of mergers is now known as Bank of America. So we bought it, we fixed it up, and sold it, and I got bit by the real estate bug. It was a huge amount of money. Well, I say huge. I was 18 at the time, so it was a lot of money for an 18-year-old guy, right? And so I switched my major in college from finance, because the naivete of thinking finance, because finance and mortgages, I'm financing real estate, same thing. No, not same thing at all, vastly different. But I did switch the major to real estate, and how I paid for college, other than 2 semesters, was by buying property. We'd fix them, sell them, fix them, and keep them as rentals. So I have an undergraduate and a master's in real estate. And then in 1989, which was about 3 months after graduating with my master's, is when my father and I started Pioneer Realty. And that's when I learned that everything that they teach you in college is wonderful. It helps you pass the test, but it has very little real-world application. You have to be out there actually doing it, not just reading about it in a book or writing a paper. So I don't know if that kind of helps.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, because I have a marketing degree, and I say I didn't learn anything about marketing until you're actually doing it. You're right. When your money is on the line, that's when you begin to learn.
Yes, ma'am. You're right. You're right.
So did you get a real estate license during those early days when you were buying and you didn't really flip. You're not a flipper. You're an investor, so you keep properties. But you did, and that's what we're going to primarily talk about on this show, is for the real estate agents, how you managed to sell 100 houses every year for I don't even know how long.
Yeah, it was 6 years in a row. And you're right. At the beginning, we would buy them, we'd fix them and sell them. That would give me some cash to, be able to take care of living expenses for a year and a half. But I mean, hey, I was in college and didn't require a lot of living expenses. They were pretty low. And then I would also take and buy a few properties as rentals here and there. But I did not get my real estate license until graduating from college. I didn't need it to do what I was doing. My father had his license, so if we wanted to sell something, we could just use my dad's license. So when I got my license, not really working for anyone else and having the experience of maybe a training that might be available at this franchisee or that franchisee, bigger firms like maybe Keller Williams, some of the larger firms like Long & Foster, Weichert, et cetera. I had to learn a lot of this stuff myself. And so I was working a whole lot crazy. I mean, it was kind of a 360, 24-hour day, 365 a year. I've even shown homes on Thanksgiving Day. So it was just kind of I guess you'd say it was an unsustainable for a lengthy period of time practice. But I had gotten to the point by my second year, and I maintained that, where I was around 20 to 24 sales a year. Not knowing at the time the average real estate agent then was only selling around 4 homes a year, I figured, well, that's pretty good, when I looked back at it. But I really didn't have any systems. I didn't have any, the word I'm looking for, unfortunately, just went right out of my head. I really didn't know what I was doing. I found 1 or 2 things that seemed to work, so I was kind of a grinder and would just keep doing that. And more often than not, it would work, but it just wasn't sustainable. And so I hired a multitude of different companies, read a lot of books, attended quite a good number of seminars, hired, and I think I mentioned hired some good coaches, and started to learn skills, this whole idea of putting a system in place. Had no real idea of how to put a system in place or even what type of systems should be put in place for real estate sales, either individual and or company at that time. And so once I did that, I was in the industry for about 10 years at that point. My sales started to increase. The amount of time I was working started to decrease. And so 2007 was the end of my 6th year in a row of being at or over 100 transactions a year without a big team. It was me and 1 assistant. And I was working about 2.5 days a week. I can say that now. I wouldn't have said that earlier because, gosh, I didn't want my competition to know I didn't really work a whole lot to sell 100 homes a year. Now, getting to that point at the beginning, I did have kind of a team. I had 1 other individual that worked with me as a buyer agent, and I wound up getting 2 full-time and a part-time staff person to help. And then the last 2 years, it was just 1 assistant. She was full-time, and me. And what I was doing was truly working 2.5 days a week, and I was still selling 100 homes a year.
So, Jesse, if I understand it, when you started in, you grew to about 24 a year, and then when you began to study and get coached and go to events and learn. You did build a team while it was still small. There was about 3 full-time, maybe 1 part-time, but you continue to refine your systems in such a manner that ultimately you were able to do it with just 1 assistant.
Yeah, it's funny. I would set goals. I mean, 1 year you're at 40, and that's when I hired my first assistant and made a lot of mistakes. Did not have a system for hiring, and so made a lot of mistakes early. And it was one of my coaches had mentioned something once, and I'd shared this with you previously, that I think most real estate agents never really think about, because they've probably never heard it mentioned before. And this is true for any and all businesses, every business, even the government. There's really only 2 activities that you can be involved in. You can be involved in the income generating activities or the income servicing activities. And so the question you need to ask yourself is, 1, which pays more? And 2, which do you enjoy? What do you want to do? So obviously the income generating is what's going to make more money. Because last time I checked, in a 100% commission industry, there are no upper limits. So you can sell as much as you want. They're not going to say you've sold 100 homes, you can't sell anymore. And I could hire people to help me with all the other things, like after the home goes under contract, kind of tracking that through the system, scheduling inspections, making sure the loan officer, if they need anything, they're in touch with somebody, or they have a contact point that's going to help them shepherd that document, getting it back and getting the loan approved and getting it to closing. Same with working with buyers, making sure that they are kept abreast of what's on the market and things of the sort. So I can spend my time doing the highest dollar productive activity that I possibly can. And the funny thing is that every year, for those 5 or 6 years, I would set a higher goal for the next year, because I figured, well, I already did 100. I want to do 110, or maybe it was 107. Could have been 115, maybe 125, because I figured, well, gosh, I already did 100. I want to do more. But after the 3rd year, I had set that higher goal, and I just as quickly crossed it out. And I said 100. My coach at the time said, why do you want to do the same amount? I said, well, I want to do the same amount, but I want to do it in less time. They said, well, that's interesting. Tell me more. I said, well, I don't want to work as many hours. I want to work less, but I want to sell the same number of homes. And they said, well, you got any ideas on that? I said, yeah, I do. He said, well, what's your idea? I said, well, I want to be able to list the home for sale without ever seeing the home or ever seeing the seller. I want to take the listing at a price that I know will sell, one that I've, set in advance, if you will. But the seller has to obviously agree to it. I want to handle the entire transaction under contract, on the market, under contract, closed, without ever having to see them having to see me. And I want them to love me for it. He said, how are you going to do it? I said, I don't know. So that was my idea. I didn't know how I was going to do it. But I was able to create that system, that framework. And that's how I was able to ultimately get to the last 2 years there of selling 100 homes a year and working about 2.5 days a week.
Okay, so you've got to tell us some of the secrets, in there. I know we don't have hours and hours, but Jesse, you got to tell us a little bit. What did you do?
It's a great question. I think it all goes back to those systems that I was talking about. You have to have a system for, and maybe it could be referred to as a customer journey. How does that very first interaction go? You have to be able to script it out. You have to choreograph it. You have to think about it. Whatever term that you want to use that resonates with you, you really have to figure how does that first interaction that you have with that individual, and for me it was on the phone, how does that whole thing work? So I had a script that I had been given by one of my mentors, one of my coaches. I had tweaked it a little bit here and there, and I got very, very good with my communication skills. So in a very, very short period of time, the people I'm speaking with, and when I say very short period of time, and I mean, it is not an exaggeration, but within about a 35, maybe 45-second period of time, my goal was to build a level of trust, confidence, and comfort in me on the phone. They've never seen me. They've never heard of me. They've never, seen a lot of advertising or marketing about me, but to feel like that on the phone with them, or have them feel, I should say, on the phone with me, having those thoughts in their mind. And I knew I was onto something because in real estate sales, and this will make sense to agents that are listening, there were things in a normal market called expired listings. Somebody had their home on the market, it didn't sell for whatever reason, and so it shows up as an expired listing, and a lot of real estate agents, I was one of them, would be trying to reach out to that seller and ask if we could be, interviewed. Well, I would ask them to be interviewed by them for the job. It's a little different mindset because I know that they have choices, but I think of this as a job interview. And I am habitually unemployed, and my goal is to get hired by that individual, do what my job entails, which is help them sell the home and or buy another one, and then I'm unemployed again. I got to go do it again. But my thinking was, if I'm always out there searching for the next person to hire me, the job, right, then I'd be okay. So getting really good and clear with my communication skills is very, very helpful, and I think that was critical, number one, to the success. The second is there was I guess what you and I would refer to as a shock and awe package that I would have delivered in advance of our meeting. Now, sometimes that was truly, I'm driving over because it's out and about in the area where I'm going to be in the next day or two, and I would leave it at their home. This did not have physical items in it other than it had paper. The only physical item I'd put in there would be maybe a pin. This said, call Jesse or the Jesse team, something of that sort. But then later, I got down to I would just prepare it and send it all by email. Now, the truth of the matter is my assistant sent it, and I would tell them that it came out, it was going to be, she would be sending it over, and then I would call them and we'd go over it. And it was the ability to handle their objections, address them in advance in that conversation, in that scripted or choreographed or however you want to think of it. Because after a period of time, you know what the objections are going to be. Out of the hundreds of different objections that anybody could possibly give anybody in this industry of real estate sales, for me as a real estate agent, I'm only getting a very limited number. That's just true for anybody and everybody. Some agents may hear vastly different sets of objections. So I needed to make sure I could address them up front. So therefore, they never came up. They never had the ability to raise that objection. Also, by getting really good in my communication skills, when I'm speaking with them, in the odd chance that they may come up with an objection that I don't typically get, because I knew my script, I followed a script. And it just simply became so ingrained as part of me, it didn't sound funny. It was more like I thought of myself as an actor, right? I had internalized it, so I didn't need to have the piece of paper in front of me. So the reality of it was they really didn't have much of a chance of saying no. Although, in all fairness, there were a few occasions where I chose not to take the listing. That was typically because those people in the process of the conversation, following the script, if you want to think of it that way, they impressed me as being a real pain in the butt. And there are people out there that first interaction is like, the first impressions. They can sometimes be vastly wrong. Maybe that person is not like that. And that's more often than not what happened. But I had the mindset that they had an issue, they had a problem, they had some reason that they wanted to sell that piece of real estate, and I was the best person for the job to help them get that done. Are there other real estate agents that could help them with the sale? Of course. But my mindset was I was the best for them. I was the best choice, the best option. And if I didn't do everything I could to convince them of that on the phone while we're having that conversation, then I have let them down. So I don't know, did that help answer some of that question?
Yeah. So were most of your leads coming from the expired, or was that just an example?
That was just an example. A lot of it came from for sale by owners, of course, from expireds. I called more expireds, but when I'm looking at my numbers at the end of every year, it's always a for sale by owners, which I really didn't call a whole lot of them. I also got a lot of repeat and referral business, and I got a fair amount from, I would have a sign in a particular neighborhood. The best advertising is for that sign to say for sale, and then within a very short period of time say contract pending or under contract, or however, they've got some pretty cute ones out there these days. You just missed it, something like that. But to put that up there as quickly as possible, because what that meant was that guy knows what he's doing because he got it under contract very quick. So that's a lot of what I had done to do that. Now, I also worked with a few investors, and the reason for that is I have quite an affinity with investors because I invest. I'm an investor. So when I'm talking with an investor, I have a little more in common with them. I'm not just the real estate agent looking to list or sell that rental or help them buy something that they can fix up and sell or anything of that sort. So I did have a few of those that I had cultivated over the years. Not a ton, because a lot of investors will waste a ton of your time and they'll never buy anything. Those are the people that just love to talk about. They just don't like to actually, or maybe I shouldn't say they don't like to. They like to talk about, but they don't do. And for somebody that's, their income is dependent on a commission from a sale, you kind of want the person that's going to do.
So Jesse, I know then you had a script, and I've heard you say it, and I want you to say it to those who are listening. So when I don't know if you had already they had already signed the listing contract or whatever, but you did have a script of how the interaction with you was going to go from that point on. Can you share that script?
Oh, you mean like from the time that we took the listing? Because the listing appointment script can be short, it can be lengthy. You mean like once they've chosen me to list their home for sale? Oh, yes. Sure. So Nana, I really appreciate the opportunity to get your home on the market and get it sold. Now, so I'm going to be doing just a couple of things real fast. And let's pretend just for a moment, Nina, that I'm actually in your home, because most real estate agents still go and meet the people in their home. Okay, so we'll assume that. So what I'm going to do is take just a quick moment here. I'm going to go through and take a couple of pictures just to kind of help get things started. And I'm also going to, measure rooms and things of the sort. Is there anything special, maybe in particular, that you haven't told me about your home that, already that would be really good to know? And so you'll tell me whatever you tell me. I know that's terrific, and I really, really appreciate it. So one of my assistant's jobs, and you might remember seeing her name right here, it's Melinda. She is my listing coordinator. One of the things that she will be doing is every Friday, she'll be calling you in the afternoon to let you know what's been going on during the previous week. Because I never want you to have to wonder, wonder what's going on with the sale of my home. I mean, what is Jesse doing? So you have a list of everything I'm going to be doing to get your home sold. You saw that in the pre-listing package that I had dropped off earlier, correct? And they always say, well, sure, yeah, I saw that. Terrific. And you saw Melinda in there too, right? Yeah, great. So what will happen is she'll be giving you an update as to what's going on. So you'd never have to worry about ever calling us to wonder, right? Now, if you have any questions in the meantime, you're certainly welcome to call. But we're also going to put a lockbox on the home, and we'll call you in advance before anybody wants to come out and see it. We'll have the sign in the yard. That should be set up in the next couple of days. Do you have the extra key that I had asked for the lockbox? And typically people are always going to say, sure, great. So I'll put that lockbox on the door. You can still use the door. It's no problem. It's a little bulky, but you can get your hand around the knob, no problem. So are there any other questions that you might have for me at this time? Typically the answer is no, not really. I'll say, great. I really appreciate it. Again, thank you so much. And by the way, Melinda will probably be in touch with you within the next day or so, just to introduce herself and say hello. So I really appreciate your time, Nina, and I'm going to be right out the door. And because let's face it, I'd love to sit here and chat with you longer. You're a really great person and quite interesting to speak with, but I can't get your home sold for you if I'm sitting here talking to you, right? And after all, you'd probably rather have me out there trying to get your home sold. And oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, you have a great day. Thanks again, and I'll talk with you shortly. And then I'm out the door. Because in that pre-listing package, yeah.
Or the phone call was over, because ultimately that's where you got to.
Well, if it's a phone call, it's going to be a little different script. If it's the phone, then it's, I really appreciate you very much taking the time to speak with me. Now, here's what's going to happen, just so you know, because as you know, you and I have not met before. I have an assistant that's going to be stopping by with a lockbox, and they'll come in, they'll take a few measurements, they'll take some photos of the home, and they'll obviously be bringing out a sign to put in the front yard as well. So that's going to be, generally speaking, the same assistant that will be the one in touch with you every Friday. Her name is Melinda. Now, it could very well be, though, that it may be my buyer agent, and you saw him listed in there, Richard Smith. Richard will be in touch with you, if not Melinda, within the next 24 hours to set up a time to come by, see the home, grab the key, etc. But remember, Melinda's going to be in touch with you every Friday to let you know how things are going with the sale of your home. Now, do you have any particular questions for me at this time that I can answer for you? Because otherwise I'm going to let you go. I want to get started letting all of my qualified buyers know about your home so that we can get that process of getting it under contract for you as soon as we can. Did you have any questions for me at this time? Typically, they don't, because the reality of it is the only two questions that a seller has. Now, they may have a few others that they come up with, but the essence is, how much is my home worth? Honestly, no funny business. How much is my home worth? And you get that for me. That's really all they really want to know. So whatever the dollar figure is that you're telling them, for one, be honest. There's an awful lot of agents out there that will tell people an exceptionally high price, knowing it's never going to sell for that, but that's how they think they're going to get the listing. And then they start beating people up on price reduction, week after week after week after week, and just give them a fair and reasonable price at the very beginning. But more importantly, when you show up, how do you show up? Do you show up as somebody that they feel is able to actually get that job done for them? And by the way, that does not mean how you dress. How you dress is certainly a part of it, but that can certainly be addressed as well. Because when the weather's hot, I'm not showing up in a suit. Matter of fact, I never wore a suit. I'd show up in a pair of shorts and a nice-looking shirt. And I would tell them that in advance, just so you know, it's a little warm outside. And I know I'm coming to you at your home, but if it's okay, I'm going to probably be wearing just a nice pair of shorts and a nice shirt. Because one of the things that I had I guess you'd call this person a mentor of mine, said years and years ago, he said, you never want to overdress for your client or the person you want to be your client. He said, it's okay to dress the same as them or maybe a little underdressed, but you never want to overdress because you don't want them to feel like you are talking down to them. And I thought, he's got a good point. So it was never an issue of how I showed up, if you will. And I didn't show up with jeans and with holes in them and, cutoffs or flip-flops or something like that. But in the course of the conversation, I did my best to proactively explain how we were going to do things. And then that is a lot of it in that pre-listing package, that shock and awe package. And then I'm simply repeating it, which reaffirms it while I'm there. You're going to be getting a call every Friday from Melinda, those kinds of things. So I hope that
Jesse,
answers your question.
Yeah, but here's what I'm sensing. I mean, you talked about scripting. I'm sensing it. I'm sensing real confidence in your voice. I'm sensing a certain cadence even about your conversation. I mean, I don't sense a man who's anxious or, needs a sale there's a real sense of calm, but confidence, I'm the right person. I mean, I'm sure that, and I don't know, maybe that's a natural thing for you. I don't know.
Well, of course it's natural. No, I'm just kidding. You're right. That is part of, and it kind of goes along with you have to have the mindset that you're the right person for the job. I think it's very important to also go in not with the mindset of, I really need this. I really, really need this listing. That's like going into a junkyard with a, piece of raw meat in your pocket. That dog and that junkyard dog is hungry. He's coming after you. He can sense it. He can smell it. He knows that fear, if you will. Okay, and that's kind of the analogy of the steak in your pocket. He can sense that fear. You have to go in with 100% commitment to telling that person what is best for them. And if you truly believe that you are the best person to deliver what's best for them, then it's going to obviously follow that natural course of they're going to hire you. I was a very firm believer, and I would tell people this quite often, and I would tell them, I know this sounds a little cliche, but I 100% believe this to be true. and that is that I can have anything I truly want to have as long as I help enough other people get what they want to have, which means I have to put your needs, your desires, your goals ahead of mine. So if I'm looking out for you and your best interest ahead of mine, then I'll be taken care of as a direct result of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Every time, that's exactly what they would say. Now, in many cases, their head is nodding as I'm saying it, and then they get to the, yeah, that makes sense, and that's what we want, you know? So you have to be, I'm not going to say detached because that sounds a little weird, and that's not quite what I mean, but you have to be able to not be afraid to take that listing. And because I was not afraid to turn the listing down, that made all the difference in the world. I think once I shifted that mindset. And Nia, let me tell you something that I did. I'll tell you, I heard one of my mentors or coaches one time make a comment about firing a client. Don't ever be afraid to fire a client. And I thought, you know, I'm gonna take that to heart. And so it wasn't terribly long afterwards, I'm in a listing presentation. At that point, I was still going to people's homes, and it was an older couple. The wife was the one doing all the talking. The husband was just sitting there, didn't say a word. And that's very true in many couples. One of the people there are the ones that are, you know, kind of the mouthpiece, if you will. The others there, I guess, for moral support, I don't know. But I'll never forget, I tried to close on price because the price that they wanted, or she wanted, felt it was worth, was way over the market. And so after trying to close, I think it was 5 times, this person impressed me as just being a pain in the butt. I mean, I understand, and I'm very comfortable with if they come back with a few objections on price. No problems with that. But there was something, I guess the spidey sense maybe, was telling me that if I took the listing, this lady was just going to be a pain in the butt. So sensing that, I just said, you know, Ms. Jones, Mr. Jones, I really appreciate both of you allow me to come out and speak with you this afternoon about getting your home on the market and getting it sold. It looks like, though, and I'm saying this while I'm gathering all the papers that I brought, I said, you know, I really appreciate you allowing me to come out and speak with you about getting your home on the market and getting it sold. It looks like we're just a little too far apart on price. But I'll tell you, I really do want to help anybody and everybody that I run into. And so if you would like, I would be more than happy to give you the name and phone number of a good agent. He's a really good guy. He's a very good agent that specializes in taking overpriced listings that never sell. Would you like me to give you his name and phone number? Now, the husband heard what I said, and he leans back in his chair, crosses his arms, and he's got this great big old Cheshire cat grin on his face. A phone number for a real estate agent that specializes in taking overpriced listings that never sell. Now, the wife, oh, yeah, I would like his name and number. Yes, please, I'd like that very much. So I gave her the name and number of a real estate agent I just did not like. To this day, I don't like the guy. Yeah, it's just one of those things. We all have people like that, right? And so I know what happened. I walked out the door, and the door just barely probably got closed behind me, and he's looking over at her, and I'm making up names because I don't remember at this point. Like, you know, Martha, you know what that boy just did? She probably just did because she didn't catch it then. I thought that was awesome. I'd done that. I've only done that twice. And to give a listing back, that one I just prevented that pain in the butt from happening in the beginning. See, most real estate agents are so concerned because they're not out there doing what they need to do, marketing and prospecting every day, that one listing is so critical to them and what they feel they need for their business, that they're deathly afraid. They'd never consider giving it away. I would rather give it away up front. Now that's freed up time and space in my schedule in my life for somebody that appreciates me and what the value that I bring to the table for them. And
so
I
Jesse,
also
you talked about systems and stuff, but did you have a marketing budget? So I mean, you just a moment ago you talked about out prospecting and stuff. I mean, did you have a particular marketing budget that you had?
You know, it's really interesting you asked that, because I've had a lot of agents over the time just really have a tough time because of what I did. What I did, even with the do not call laws and things, is I was on the phone. I didn't spend a lot of money with full page ads. I had ads that I would put in various publications, but the phone never rang as a result of the ad. I would also put an ad in a smaller local newspaper that would go out just within the community. I never got any leads from that. I did it because the guy that was the ad rep just became a friend. So I really didn't have much of an ad budget. I did send postcards into the neighborhoods or the general area around properties that I had listed or that I had sold. And it wasn't because I was expecting someone to call from that postcard, but it was because when I made the phone call, like the day after those things were expected to have been delivered, I wanted it to at least be in their head they had heard my name. And so it would be a little better conversation. So I really didn't have much of an ad budget. I didn't really, my business was actually very lean, so it was very, very profitable.
Well, Jesse, I am looking at the clock. We are over time, and I always hate that because, I could just sit here and listen to you for hours. But I know that there's going to be people that are listening to this show that says, and I know you've kind of transitioned out, well, not kind of, you are not a real estate agent now. You are in investing, but you have been known to do some real estate coaching. And you have a book. What I wish they had told me when I got my real estate license, if I know what the name of that book is. And and before the show, we talked about it, and you are going to offer to send a hard copy, I think, of that book to anybody who wants it. All they need to do is pay $3.75 for the shipping. I will pay for the envelope and maybe the shipping.
Yep, that's right. It'll pay for the envelope and the postage at the USPS. That's right. And they can also buy it at Amazon, but what the heck? This is far less expensive, right?
Yeah.
And I'll even autograph the inside with their name.
So how can they get a copy of that book?
Well, the best thing to do and the easiest is going to just send me an email to Jesse, JESSE, at JesseLennon.com. And Lennon is LENNON. So just send a simple email, Jesse at JesseLennon.com. If they want to put in the subject line free book, that'd be fine. It might be good, though, to put in the text of the email the real estate sales book, and then, of course, their name and the best mailing address to send it to. Therefore, and if they're buying it for someone else, then if they would like for me to, autograph the inside, just please give me the first name of the person they want me to sign it to. If I don't get a name, then I won't be able to do that. Or for fear I'd put the wrong name on there, right? So, to Mary, best of success, Jesse. But I'm giving it to Bob. So, anyway. And by the way, this book is truly what my business looked like when I was selling 100 homes a year at a 10,000-foot view. So it is absolutely what my business looked like. I'm not pulling any punches. It's in there.
Wow. Well, it's a very, very generous offer, and I really appreciate it. And Jesse, this has been fabulous. Thank you so much for being on today's show.
Listen, I really appreciate you inviting me and asking me if I've had a good time. Like you just said, I wish we had a little more time. There's plenty of more things I'd love to share with folks, but dang it, that clock is what it is, right?
It is. Well, thank you. So you've been listening to Megabucks Radio, and to learn more about what Jesse shared or anything else that's mentioned on past episodes, visit us at megabucksradio.com. Until next time.
Thank you for listening to Megabucks Radio with Nina Hershberger. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or to listen to past episodes, visit megabucksradio.com.